Hello, my internet friends, and welcome. In this video, we're going to talk about chord substitution tricks that any beginner can easily start doing right away. The first thing we do here is we look at a basic chord progression. It's a 1-4-5 progression, the key of C, C, F, G. And then we look at how the chords function in the chord progression. The 1 chord functions as a tonic, the 4 chord functions as a subdominant, and the 5 chord functions as a dominant. If you'd like to learn how to create beautiful chord progressions in any key, grab my Secrets of the Chord Chain book. That way you can take everything you learn here and apply it to many more chord progressions. Now let's dive in. You may want to take notes, or you could get the full color PDF of all the slides in this video if you join me on Patreon, or you could just watch it a number of times. Now let's get into how everything works here. The function of a tonic, the 1 chord. A tonic is a place of rest, a beginning or ending of a phrase. I like to call it home. The function of a subdominant, the 4 chord. The function of a subdominant is to move from the tonic family to the dominant family. It has the feel of movement. I like to call it leaving home. The function of a dominant, the 5 chord. The dominant pulls toward the tonic and wants to resolve to the tonic. I call it, I want to go home, because it wants to go home to the tonic, our home chord. The 1, 3, and the 6 chord function as a tonic. So here's the rule. 1 equals 3 equals 6. These chords are interchangeable because they share the same function. The 1, 3, and the 6 chord function as a tonic, so they are all in the tonic family. The 4 and the 2 chord function as a subdominant. The rule here, 2 equals 4. These chords are interchangeable because they share the same function. The 4 and the 2 chord function as a subdominant, so they are in the subdominant family. The 5 and the 7 chord function as a dominant. The rule here, 5 equals 7. These chords are interchangeable because they share the same function. The 5 and the 7 chord function as a dominant, so they are in the dominant family. So let's take a look at what we've learned here. The tonic family, these are our home chords. The 1, the 6, and the 3 chord are in the tonic family. The subdominant family, these are our leaving home chords. The 4 and the 2 chord are in our subdominant family. And then the dominant family, our I want to go home chords, the 5 and the 7 chord are in our dominant family. So, what can we do with this amazing information? Well, we can better understand how chords work, and this will help you create chord progressions. And we can easily substitute chords. Chords that share the same function are interchangeable. Now we get started on our journey. Let's take a look at how we use these in an actual chord progression. This progression is a 1-6-4-5 progression, C, A minor, F, G, 7. Let's apply the first rule. 1 equals 3 equals 6. We swap the 1 chord out for the 3 chord. Now, for the ending of a phrase or the ending of a song, you may want to revert back to that regular 1 chord because you may find that it has a little better resolution. Maybe you just want to use the E minor every other measure. Let's take a look at our chord functions chart here. We swapped out the 1 chord for the 3 chord. Those are both in the tonic family. 1 chord is C, 3 chord is E minor. Let's take a look at another rule. 2 equals 4. We swapped out the 4 chord for the 2 chord. Okay? What's interesting here is this gives us a circle progression. What I mean here is it rolls backwards around the circle of fifths. We might even call it back cycling, circle progression or back cycling. So we got E to A, E, F, G, A, that's a 4th. A to D, A, B, C, D, that's a 4th. D to G, D, E, F, G, that's a 4th. And then if we go back and resolve to our C chord, we got G, A, B, C. That's a 4th too. So if we start on that E minor, we're going all the way backwards around that circle of fifths till we get to the C chord. That's a circle progression. These are used all the time in all kinds of music. Let's take a look at our chord functions chart now. We took that F chord, which is in our subdominant family. We swap that out for the D minor. And now our last rule, 5 equals 7. Now here we swapped out the 5 chord for the 7 chord. Now, the 7 chord is a diminished chord. This is actually a diminished 7 chord. A lot of times we just write that as a diminished chord, or we may just say diminished chord when we use diminished 7 chord. But the diminished 7 is what we use for chord substitution, and when we use diminished chords as passing chords. It's interesting to note this is the exact same chord as a G7 flat 9 chord, the B diminished, okay? B diminished equals G7 flat 9. So if you play this, maybe you just want to tell your friends, hey, it's a 7 flat 9 chord. Sounds a little more exciting maybe than diminished, I don't know. Let's take a look at our chart here. The dominant family, we've got our 5 chord, which is a G chord, and then we've got our 7 chord, which is a diminished. So we swapped out the 5 chord for the 7 chord. Now let's take a look at this with 7 chords. We're going to harmonize our chord progression now with 7 chords. We've got a C major 7, an A minor 7, an F major 7, and a G7 chord. Now we apply rule number 1. We swap out that 1 chord for the 3 chord. So we're going to have an E minor 7 now for the 1 chord. It's interesting to note that the E minor 7 is exactly the same chord as the C major 9. What I mean is, it has all the same notes, you play the exact same shape and so forth. More on this a little bit later. Let's take a look at our functions chart. Now for our home chords, we're going to have a C major 7, an A minor 7, and an E minor 7. We've taken that C major 7 and we swapped it out for the 3 chord. Now we're going to change our chord progression a little bit so we can swap out our other home chord too here. So we're going to upgrade the 6 chord to a dominant. Now, the rule we follow here is any chord can be a dominant. I have a whole separate video and articles on this that you could check out. So with that 6 chord and A7, now we can go ahead and swap out that 1 chord for the A minor 7. We follow the rule 1 equals 3 equals 6, and we swapped out the 1 chord for the 6 chord. Now it's interesting to note here that A minor 7 is actually the same exact chord as the C6. You play a C6 in this way too. You don't fret anything, play all the strings open. We take a look at our chord functions chart. We've got our C major 7 that we have swapped out for the A minor 7. Both of those in the tonic family or the home family. Now we follow our rule 2 equals 4. We swap out the 4 chord for the 2 chord. Now, it's interesting to note here that the D minor 7 is the same exact chord as the F6. Let's take a look at our chart again here. In our subdominant family, or our leaving home chords, we're going to have an F major 7, which we swapped out for the D minor 7. Now our last rule, 5 equals 7, we swap out the 5 chord for the 7 chord. Okay. This time, when we're harmonizing with 7 chords, we're going to have a B minor 7 flat 5, which may sometimes be called a half diminished chord. It's interesting to note here that this chord is the same exact chord as a G9. B minor 7 flat 5 equals G9. Now we look at our functions chart again here. We've got our G7 and our B minor 7 flat 5 as options, and we swapped out that G7 for the B minor 7 flat 5 chord. Now take a look at this progression. First chord is a C major 9. We've seen that as an E minor 7 before. Then we got our A7, okay? And our F6, we saw that as a D minor 7 previously. Then we got our G9. Now that was the B minor 7 flat 5. So it's important to understand that there are different means to the same end. So we could get these chord shapes in at least those 2 ways and possibly others. You know that if you need a 9 chord for the dominant, all you have to do is substitute the dominant for the 7 chord, and you're going to have that 9 chord. Okay? As you begin to learn about different chords, take note of what chords are similar, and then get an idea where they are in relationship to each other. Our A minor 7 is a 1/6 away from the C chord, so we got C, D, E, F, G, A. Okay? So if you ever need a 6 chord for your 1 chord, You just take that one chord and you count up 6 and you have it. It's important to understand how these chords relate to each other, make you a lot better player. Now, if you want to learn more about how to create beautiful chord progressions in any key, grab my book, The Secrets of the Chord Chain. That way you can take all of this great stuff and apply it to many more chord progressions. Okay? See the link in the description for more information, free chord book, all scales, harmonize with chords, PDFs, and then you can also, if you join me on Patreon, get a PDF of this entire presentation in full color. All right? If you like what you're hearing, smash that like button, subscribe, and hit the bell. That way you'll know when I put out another video. Now you know about chord families. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.